Having completed our build of the ET48 2.0, let's take a moment to go over some tips as well as take a closer look at this fantastic E-Truggy by Tekno RC. Although there are various developments with the ET48 2.0, many of them come from the previously released buggy version, the EB48 2.0, meaning fewer parts to carry and nice cross-compatibility. In this video, we'll take a closer look at items to be aware of while building your ET48. Of course, you'll need various tools to complete the build. Pretty standard across most RC vehicle builds to be fair, but a good quality set of hex and nut drivers do make a world of difference. Nevertheless, try not to be tempted to use an electric driver if possible. It will be much easier to strip out threads, which means you'll be needing new parts without even running the vehicle. If you do decide to go ahead and use an electric driver regardless, then keep the torque setting low and drive the screw in at a low speed, about 3/4 of the way, making sure to tighten the last part down by hand. Sticking with screws, they generally come with some machine oil on them, which will mean screws with thread lock applied may not be as effective. Before driving any screws into the vehicle, it's a good idea to give them a wipe down at the very least, in order to get rid of some of the machine oil residue that might still be on them. Screws with thread lock will hold much better without that unwanted machine oil. As with other Tekno RC vehicles, there's a ton of customizability here. All these holes in the shock tower mean the links can be placed in very slightly different locations, and even the slightest move can make a large difference when racing around a track. We have the same with the hub ends, a fair amount of customizability with both the front spindle and caster blocks too. The front arms are slightly curved by design in order to place less stress on the CVDs and less caster on the blocks. Unless you really know what you need though, with any new build I'd recommend sticking with the stock setup to start with and then customize as you run the truck to really dial it in the way you need it. For racing at least. For bashing, it's probably perfectly fine box stock. With this ET48 2.0 came a new shaped body, lower down to the main chassis with a more exposed front shock tower design, as well as a more truck-like appearance. Not only is it now lighter, it's designed to create more downforce for increased steering response, and should last longer than other standard Truggy bodies too. Although if you prefer the older style bodies that cover the front shock tower, you'll be pleased to know you still have the option available. Simply unscrew the current body mounts, and move them up to the top of the shock tower instead, using the same screw to reinstall. It's as simple as that, and great that Tekno RC recognised and implemented some backwards compatibility with older bodies. Moving on, we have a 40-tooth to 9-tooth ratio between pinion and differential gear for tons of torque, and fortunately we also keep easy access to the differentials too, all three in fact. The front and rear diffs can be accessed easily from the front and rear of the vehicle by releasing the sway bar and a couple of screws to release the differential cover, and you can pull out the differential itself. It couldn't possibly get any easier. The center can also be accessed by releasing the 4 screws holding the top mount in place. While building the vehicle and installing the differentials alongside the drive shafts, keep turning and ensure all areas are completely free moving. That way you can deal with any binding issues straight away rather than having to try to find them later on, although stick with the build guide covered on the channel and you shouldn't have any binding issues whatsoever. Sticking with the front end for the moment though, we have the steering assembly with the bell cranks in the center. Again, make sure everything is completely free moving as soon as you install this. It should be buttery smooth and have a full range of motion. Your servo can later be programmed with endpoints if need be, but mechanically you should have the full range of motion with the fresh build. Moving on to shocks, not much to mention here. Nice easy build resulting in nice smooth movement. The shock collars are very difficult to screw on though, so prepare yourself for some sore fingers with those, but otherwise nothing much out of the ordinary here. Just like the EB48 2.0, we have lots of space for electronics here. It's the same layout as the EB48 2.0 in fact, with a steering servo at the very front, alongside space for the ESC and then the motor. You can use a full-size servo here, and a metal servo horn is definitely recommended, although as the receiver box is at the rear end, you may find you'll need a short servo extensional cable handy. Pretty cheap to pick up online, but in addition you may find you'll need nonetheless. Plenty of space for a full-size ESC here too, no issues there at all. alongside a standard 1/8 scale motor as well. Cabling between them can get a little fiddly, as with the EB48 2.0, so ensure you plan cable routes beforehand and you'll end up with a neat, tidy and more importantly easily workable solution. On the opposite side we have space for our standard battery alongside the battery strap, which is generously long and quite secure. I've been using the GensAce bashing series in the past, which have always performed really well, so decided to try their Redline Racing series for the ET48. Hard packs with bullet connections, 6000 mAh 4S with a 130C rating. Sounds ideal, and fits into the ET48 2.0 like they were made to measure. I'll be sure to report back on how these perform once run in. Anyway, moving on to the rear end, as with the front we have plenty of customizability here too, from the center shock tower all the way down to the wheel hubs. Very important to make sure all your camber links are the exact same length on all four corners too, which you should have if you followed our install guide. Again, stick with a stock setup to start with and customize from there should you need to do so, and of course making sure the notch faces the left side of the vehicle at all times. The rear wing is customizable too. The wing mount has 3 mounting positions at 0, 7 and 12mm, and the wing itself has dimples for holes to be cut to adjust downforce. Again, experiment as you run the truck to see what works best for you. Otherwise, the build itself goes incredibly smoothly with no issues at all. Everything comes together with perfection, no missing parts and no other problems. Whether you're new to the RC hobby or a pro racer, this is a well recommended E-Truggy and another great result for Tekno RC.